Welcome to Damaging Ignorance. Damaging ignorance is important because whoever controls your language of discourse controls your reality. Every story has two sides to it. On this show, we challenge the dominant discourse of the week. We challenge the dominant discourse not because our side is right, but because the other side is wrong. We offer you the actual position of things, and we are rarely wrong. And even when we are wrong, it is because we do not choose to be right. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, yes.
Now, today we would like to put Raila Odinga on trial. Charge sheet number 1. Raila Odinga does not have an agenda. Meanwhile, Ruto is rallying Kikuyus under a short, clear theme: Hustler Nation and bottom-up economics. These are sound political slogans that could pass for ideology. But Raila has not told us what he is selling. What is his equivalent of bottom-up and Hustler Nation?
When Raila Odinga appeared on the front of Harambee House, the place where Jomo Kenyatta got the instruments of power from the last expatriate, and the governor general, governor general, the colonizers, that space, the space also where Mwai Kibaki, the late, did the handshake with Raila Odinga. Right. Raila Odinga stood there with what he called his brother, and he said that the divide ends here, and the divide ends now. That was basically the message that he was sending to the country. And what he was saying with that is very simple, that his agenda has nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with the NASA principles that he left headed to Canaan. You remember they were going to Canaan. Yes. And as they were going there in the desert, he took a helicopter and came, did the handshake, and he abandoned the Canaan fellows. Absolutely. Basically saying that I am not going there. It's not about me. It's about the divide that we must end here. Yes. Do remember also that in the 2007 election, the group that Raila Odinga was with had begun propagating the idea of secession. They were saying, if we cannot be part of his government, if we cannot be allowed as other communities to form government and to produce a president, we're going to secede. And then later on, in 2017, the same narrative of secession came back. Absolutely. And they said we are going to split the country into two. The People's Republic of Kenya and the Republic of Kenya. Because we are not able to produce a president. So the Raila Odinga agenda, you say he has none, yet he articulated that agenda on the front of Harambee House. He said the divides end here, the divide ends now. His agenda was then and is now that we have to hold this country together. And he also says on that we cannot hold this country together if we have ethnic majoritarianism, which is what has torn the country apart throughout. Absolutely. If you have the dominance of only two communities, that's the Kikuyus and the Kalenjins, if you have perpetual reproduction of these two communities in power, this country cannot hold together. So the thing that Raila is selling to country, if he appears like he does not have an agenda, what he's selling the country is a nationalist covenant. And the covenant, nationalist covenant, is not a covenant between two communities, which is a covenant between the Gama people and the Kalenjins, which has dominated this country for 60 years.
60 years.
But he is selling the nationalist covenant, which is about the 40 communities on one side who have been excluded. And he's saying that you can have a president who can be drawn from the Luo nation, Kamba nation.
Absolutely. Even an Ogiek.
Maybe even an Ogiek, although Ogiek is challenging a little bit, but it's a little bit secluded. You can have someone from anywhere in the country can become president. So Raila Odinga, you are saying he has got no agenda. What agenda? What Raila is selling to this country is a nationalist covenant. He is telling us that we have to end ethnic majoritarianism, the dominance of two communities over
over 40 years.
40 years.
Yes. Over a period of 60 years.
Over a period of 60 years.
Yeah. Yes.
What Raila is selling to country is unity. What he is selling is inclusion. And what he's selling is the nationalist covenant. That anybody from anywhere in the country can become president. And what he is doing is he is saying that the 2002 election will be the theme of it, and the logic of it has to be the liberation of country from ethnic majoritarianism of only two communities. And there's nothing wrong with the two communities ruling this country as they have in the last 60 years, but basically saying let's make the ground fair for everybody else to do it. But William Ruto, to the converse, has actually rebranded this ethnic majoritarian project. And what he's done is he has gone to the Kikuyus, and instead of calling them Kikuyus, he has removed the Kikuyu label and just called them Hasras. Yes. And now what we have actually is a Hustler project, which is essentially a project of the Kalenjin and the Kikuyus. And Raila is saying that's not the way we should go. We should be more inclusive. We should bring in other communities. And actually, I think he has the support of the rest of the country.
Absolutely.
Against these two communities.
He has the support of the 40.
But there is one thing that Raila has been consistent about: constitutional change. Which brings us to charge sheet number 2. That Raila has only pushed for constitutional change so long as that change accommodates a position that he is interested in. Ruto has accused him of supporting BBI to create a position for himself. But what Ruto has not told us is that he opposed BBI to protect a position that he is interested in.
Exactly. You see, Raila has been very consistent when it comes to, actually it's not constitutional change, but constitutional stability. And constitutional stability is about building a constitution, and once it is airborne, constantly tweaking it and working around it to make sure that it serves the collective. That's a body politic, which is a commonwealth of all of us. That's what Raila has stood for. And Ruto has accused him of wanting to change the constitution to create position for himself. But the actual truth is actually that Ruto, what did you say?
Ruto has been accusing Raila of wanting to create positions, and that's the only reason he supported BBI.
Oh, that's not what you said. No. Okay, that's A, part A.
Part A. Part B is that Ruto himself was going against BBI because he was interested in preserving a position, right?
Okay, so put in summary, Ruto is accusing Raila of changing the constitution to create position for himself and his friends. A. But what we are now being told is that Ruto opposed the change in the constitution because he wanted to preserve a position
for
himself. That is exactly the point you're making.
Yes, precisely.
But when you look at the path to constitutional change, we must remember the 2005 referendum, and I think the president alluded to it in his memorial, in the memorial service of memorizing Mzee Kibaki. And he said that 2005 was a very low moment for Mzee Kibaki. And that's what produced 2007 violence. But 2007 violence also, although dark for Mzee Kibaki, he translated it into a constitutional moment.
Absolutely.
And so we came up with a 2008 constitutional consensus, also known as the Kofi Annan consensus.
Correct.
Come 2010, the 2010 constitution was an omnibus that had far too many things around it. It could not, it accommodated everything else, the human rights issues that civil society was pushing for. And the limitation of the powers of the presidency and all that. But it failed to accommodate the Kofi Annan consensus. The Kofi Annan consensus was the most critical of them all, which was about creating the position of prime minister.
And two deputies.
But it was not accommodated in the 2010 constitution. Now Uhuru Kenyatta, with the person he calls his brother, wanted to bring that consensus and front-load it ahead of the 2022 election. If today we had done BBI and created those positions, born out of the Kofi Annan consensus, and had prime minister, two deputies, and all that,
the Matatu
presidency instead of the Ferrari presidency we have, which Ruto is working very hard to preserve because he wants to spin this Ferrari, as opposed to including other people. If we had gotten BBI, the difficulties we have today of choosing a deputy president would not exist. We will, in Azimio, would have given Kalonzo Musyoka prime minister or deputy president, whatever the case is. And that's the vision that Raila had with Uhuru Kenyatta. So when you say that he has absolutely no plan around this, I think his agenda is one of creating that stability.
Constitutional
stability.
But I have a question there.
And a stability that's built around proliferation or liberalization of the executive office of the presidency. So that you have 5 occupants of that particular position.
But I have a question.
I asked you to ask me a question earlier, and then
now is the right moment.
You have woken up.
Now, the intention of creating this Matatu presidency, if that had happened, we would not have the scenario we have right now of having 55 presidential candidates, 47 independent, and 8 sponsored by parties. In 2017, we had 8 presidential candidates. Now we have 55, right? That is 7 times more presidential candidates that we had 5 years ago. If we had that right now, it will even create a logistical nightmare for IEBC.
I'm actually very worried about the story of the independent candidates. At one point, DRC had a presidential ballot that was 99 pages.
99 pages.
My word.
99 pages. A whole booklet. 55 candidates means that we'll have a booklet that's about how many pages?
I mean, we had 8, meaning we will have about 7, 8.
No, we'll have up to 12
pages.
12 pages of a presidential ballot. Now, the big problem around that is this. When you are counting, you normally see how they count the ballots. Ruto here, Raila here, Raila here, Raila here,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I love it.
That's how it's going to count.
Yes.
A lot of Railas on this side. But now, the returning officer will have to go to the booklet and go through it and say, oh, it is Ruto.
Yeah.
And then he will pick it and say,
Yes.
Because it's a whole, the ballot is everything. All the 55 candidates.
Yes, he'll have to open
together.
Page,
he has to open pages.
By page.
But then when he goes to Raila, he'll go and see Raila, Tico, right?
Yeah.
With an orange.
Yes.
And then they will go back and see there's a guy called
Musyoka.
No, Musyoka, called
Yaga.
Roiro. And instead of an orange, it will be
a cabbage.
Not a cabbage. It will be it will be a lemon, a ripe lemon, which looks like an orange.
Yeah.
So my grandmother will go and say, "I'm voting for Raila." So because she has to remove her glasses and.
She's something close to an orange.
And so something close to Raila.
Yeah.
And something close to Raila is Roiro. And the orange was there. But it was a lemon which was ripe. It was not distinguished. So she ticks, this is the one. Then before she leaves, because she's educated, she goes through the thing.
She's like, oh.
It says, oh. I meant Raila. So she goes back and cancels out. Roiro. And then she's this one I wanted, says tick. I wanted Raila. And then she puts it in. Now that will be counted as a spoiled ballot. But that's not even the biggie. Those are small things. Main problem is that the 55 candidates.
Running mate each of them will have a running mate.
Now, we're not talking about Ruto, we're not talking about Raila, we're not talking about the legit candidates. It's the independents. Each of the independent candidates will have a running mate. And that is a national security problem. Not because government cannot offer them security because they'll be able to do it, but because the Constitution says that should a candidate or a running mate die before the election, then the election will have to be postponed for 60 days. So then I ask you, gentlemen, so we have 47 independent candidates with 47 running mates. If candidate one, running mate dies, or he is died, by died is he can be taken out.
This
politics.
Terminal illness, you put somebody there with a terminal illness.
No, let's not even be. If we have lost 1,000 people every single election, I mean, killing a running mate is not a problem. So a running mate is killed because you are seeing that this election is not going in my direction, then you're given 60 days. Now, if you take a running mate, all the 47 running mates dying one after the other, and you're buying 60 days throughout, it gives you 7 years.
Absolutely.
Election postponed for 7 years. And that is, BBI actually wanted to remove that particular clause of the running mate dying and confine it on to the presidential candidate. So the long and short of this is actually that I think that this election is going to be very dramatic. Twists and turns. Twists and turns from the logistics of voting for 55 candidates, 200 MCAs, all of it happening within a span of constitutional limits of 1 day, and IEBC not even. How will you even count those votes?
It's logistically possible. You have 7,000 independent candidates.
And we have something called BVR. If BVR fails, what happens? But political science 101, good people in Kenya. That is a God-given moment for the deep state. This gives the state what we call electro-grayism. Grayism is gray areas for elections.
Yes.
And that is how it, Nikita Khrushchev taught us that.
It's not those who vote that matter.
It is
those who count the vote
that matter. And I must add here again also, and these are democratic practices in Africa, that incumbents in Africa do not lose elections unless they are incompetent. Yes. So they take advantage of grayism. And sometimes they will even create the grayism, the electoral grayisms, and take advantage of them thereafter. Anyway, I'm giving advice to Azimio on this. Yeah. Because Azimio people have been rigged out of, or they claim that they have been rigged out of elections for the past I don't know how many years, 4 years.
Yeah, for election season.
All of this happens because of these bureaucratic loopholes, also known as grayism.
Yeah. So you're saying what? If one candidate is popped, one running mate, then the election will happen in October.
Okay. Let's even assume you don't even have to pop a candidate. Not candidate, but running mate. Some of these running mates of 47 candidates take matatus. So if the matatu, there is a tire burst, and then the matatu falls down, Jalopy matatu, it falls down, and the candidate happens to be inside, he is the only one who does not survive. What happens? Or some of these candidates, because these are our experiments. A candidate lives in Kibera and is prancing around going home after campaigns. Then is bited by a dog, and the dog has rabies. And then the candidate contracts rabies, and then after 2 days he dies. Story over. We have to go back and reset the election 60 days. That's how incompetently our constitution has been written.
Well, it is what it is.
And by the way, you can have them bited
as well,
repeatedly until all the 47 go. I mean, the room, what I'm calling grayism here, and I'm talking purely as a political scientist, what I'm calling electoral grayism is dangerous to a fault.
Charge sheet number 3, that Raila does not have an economic program. If he has the nationalist covenant and constitutional stability, what he doesn't have is an economic program.
Prof, before you answer,
Sure.
how would we say Baba has no economic plan, and yet he was the co-author of Vision 2030. The only two authors, Mwai Kibaki, Raila Odinga. All right. Now, if it was not for Vision 2030, we would not have the Port of Lamu. If it was not for Vision 2030, we would have no expressway. Right. If it was not for Vision 2030, we would not have SGR. Right. And also let's remember that it's when Raila Odinga was Prime Minister during the Grand Coalition government, Kenya registered its highest economic growth of 8.4%. Right? That is a man with a plan. That is a man, and he's always had a plan.
When the Luo nation and its intellectual content in brains was injected into mainstream government, because they have been excluded for the last 60 years. When they were brought in, and they came in with all the learnings they have had all these years, people in government say that things change. That's when actually big visions for country happen. And around that time, Uhuru Kenyatta was Minister for Finance.
That's right.
And he understood the vision of this great nation. And that's why I think he embraced Raila. I agree with you. For you to say, you, with your charge sheet, that Raila Odinga has no economic program. That is downright wrong. Raila Odinga has what we call a minimum program and a maximum program. Minimum economic program and a maximum economic program. But before I do that, before I elaborate on that, from my own take, I need to give you a story. Once upon a time, I used to consult for the Rwandese government.
Right.
And so one day, the chief advisor to Paul Kagame called me. His name was David Himbara, Professor David Himbara, whom I knew when he was a PhD student, and he came to University of Nairobi when I was teaching there, and I helped him with his thesis. So Himbara comes and he tells me, right now Himbara and the Kagame regime are not seeing eye to eye,
yes,
I think. And so when he showed up, he told me that they have only 2,000 graduates in Rwanda. That's during the reconstruction process.
Yes.
And they wanted to hire the best brains we have in Kenya. And I said, sure, I have a few guys we can hire. So I put up a line of people that were hireable. And amongst them was my good friend, I don't know whether he's still my friend, a fellow called David Day. He's gone quiet after he did Bottoms Up. So David Day was hired. I interviewed him with the Rwandese ambassador, Bill Kayonga, and David Himbara at the Rwandese embassy. And we interviewed him, fine economist, tick. He was hired. But after we hired him, Himbara said, we need to go and look for Raila. It was during the 2007 election. Things were very thick then. And Kagame had suggested that what we did in Kenya was a military coup. You know, this thing of the nationalist covenant on Raila. Raila saying that the only way we can resolve the problems that we have is by being inclusive and accommodating. We got into a place we've been pushed that the other communities were saying, no, all we need is a coup d'etat. Then we can take over. So we went to see Raila with Himbara. And when we landed, this is on record, Raila was with William Ruto. Ruto then was an apprentice. He was learning the ropes.
Yes, he was a Junet of those days.
But by the way, he was exactly a Junet type. Then learning the ropes. And as we conversated, Raila articulated his vision for country. And his vision and the Rwandese vision were the same. And the vision was about making Kenya pretty much like the Asian tigers. And he articulated it so clearly. I wish I had recorded it. But I could see that this man actually has a big picture.
Yes, and is that now the maximum program?
That is a maximum program. But before I go to the maximum program, let me go back to David Day, whom we had hired and we had left him. By the way, they were paid a lot of money, these people. But when he went to Rwanda, I was called by the head of public service there once. He told me he's an intercontinental in Nairobi. And he told me, 3 months after you send me some brilliant advisors to Paul Kagame, I have to fire one of them. And I thought it was one of the people who was also big-headed that he was going to fire. But unfortunately, the person they fired was David Day. David Day says that he resigned, but according to the Rwandese government and the conversation I had with them, they said if he does not resign, we are firing him. So it was a question of who put the letter before the other. And this David Day guy is now the one who has done the bottoms up. Bottoms up as an ideology is fantastic. We must give it to them. But does it have the meat? It's just a slogan. It doesn't have the meat, underneath it. But Raila has what, in my view, and I could be wrong on this, he has a minimum program minimum program is giving 6,000 shillings to every family, 26% of households that have no jobs. And that is different to saying that we are going to cancel all Fuliza loans by paying Fuliza, or we'll give Mama Mbogas 100 billion. That's different. But cushioning from below minimally, that every single month, government will give you 6,000 shillings. That's the minimum program. But his maximum program is to make Kenya pretty much one of the Asian tigers. Like Singapore. At least that's what I had him articulate when I met him with the Rwandese. And whether that vision has changed or not, I do not know.
Probably has. I mean, that is the vision that was articulated in sessional paper number 10 of 1965. That is what the intention will be to revive. Absolutely. And the whole idea with the Asian tiger philosophy is to discard the whole principle of comparative advantage. You go to university and you're taught as an economist about comparative advantage. If you're good at making apples, if you're good at plucking tea, you will pluck tea for the rest of your life. And you should never ever venture out from that trade. But if you do that, precisely, it's defeatist. If you do that, then you remain at the bottom of the pyramid as far as capital.
But you're one of the believers of the South Korean model.
Absolutely.
And the bad Samaritans. How did they do it? Because that, I think, is the Raila Odinga vision.
Yes.
His maximum economic program.
Yes. I mean, it's very simple. You have to have very serious, bold leadership, and you've got to be experimental. South Korea was very experimental. It's called the developmentalist approach. So they break off with what they are currently good at and experiment with other modes of production, which are more profitable, which are about value addition. So from tea plucking, you move obviously to processing that tea, packaging and branding it, exporting it under a certain brand, and it has more value, and you have more resources. And that model, you scale it up to every other sector of the economy.
And that is how South Korea moved from being. In 1963, South Korea and Kenya were the same level. And
they even asked us for a loan.
We gave him a loan. Jomo Kenyatta gave him a loan of 10,000 US dollars. We were like IMF to them. He said, generously, you take it. And they repaid it slowly.
Absolutely.
And that's $1 million shillings.
Yes, absolutely. And also gave Singapore our Nairobi master plan.
In 1965, South Korea went to the World Bank and they asked them for a loan as well, because they wanted to get into steel manufacturing. So they asked the World Bank for a loan, a small amount, like $1 million. And the World Bank looked at them and they look, what do you guys do? You guys are fishermen. You guys, you pluck tea. What are you telling us? You can manufacture your own steel. Get out of here. So they went to Japan, crossed over. They asked Japan for the money. Japan was like, yeah, sure thing. Do you know today South Korea has the 11th largest, obviously economy. It has the 2nd largest steel manufacturing company in the world.
And South Korea was
POSCO.
They borrowed money from Kenya in 1963. They were at the same level, even maybe poorer. If you read the Bad Samaritan, they are describing families in Korogosho and in our villages exactly the way they were. But now look at them. They are pretty much advanced. But the point here is that there has to be a balance between the minimum economic program and the maximum economic program. The minimum economic program is about cushioning our people from difficulties of economic haggaries, or the cushioning from economic haggaries, rather. The maximum program is about the big picture. But there is a sense in which, and I think this is Raila's story here, people have to be taken through some difficult moments. And if people are complaining today about the cost of living and all that, yeah, Raila or Ruto, the cost of living will continue to go up.
Yes.
The question is who has a big picture
Yes.
amongst the two of them,
Yeah.
and who has a maximum program and who has a minimum program. Ruto has a minimum program, but he has not told us what his maximum program, economic program is. So,
Yes.
if we have put Raila Odinga on trial today,
Yes.
and we have asked the question whether he has
Has an agenda.
agenda,
He has an agenda. It is a nationalist agenda.
it is a nationalist covenant.
Covenant.
His agenda is about, very simply, ending ethnic majoritarianism,
Yeah.
the dominance of two communities over the rest of the country until the kingdom come. He wants to end that. Does he have an agenda in terms of the constitutive instruments of our country?
Yes.
Is he asking for constitutional stabilization for his own good? Absolutely not. He is doing that for purposes of ensuring that if a constitution has taken off, the country has taken off using these instruments, that he's able to do the navigation and balancing by tweaking this particular instrument.
Yeah.
And that's why we said, well, it will be easier for us to have BBI, so that we create position for other people, as opposed to having a Ferrari presidency.
A Ferrari presidency.
And
Finally.
does he have an economic
Agenda.
My submission is that he has a minimum economic program and a maximum economic program. So if we are putting him on trial, in my thinking, I think he is not guilty.
Not guilty. Not guilty.
That's my verdict.
Not guilty.
Absolutely.
Not guilty.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is our hope that we have damaged some ignorance. We also hope that we have exposed the owners of the ignorance project. Remember, things are not as bad as they seem. Or are they?